All right, so I told you guys after Russia decided to invade Ukraine that it was likely we were going to see a massive wave of refugees. And unfortunately, it seems like what we're seeing on the ground right now is almost unprecedented in modern history in terms of the capacity and the speed at which this crisis is unfolding right now. So according to the UN, I got a good breakdown here from Jake Johnson's Common Dreams, who says, according to the UN, in just the first 7 days of this war, we have already seen over 1 million refugees flee the country. Okay, so a little bit of details here. He says, the United Nations Refugee Agency said late Wednesday that Russia's deadly assault on Ukraine has forced more than 1 million people to flee the country in just a week, a humanitarian crisis that the organization warned will get exponentially worse if the war continues. And what I told you guys yesterday in both of my videos and what I'm going to remind you of right now is the nature of this war and how it is unfolding. It basically seems like Russia anticipated that this was all going to go a lot smoother and quicker for them in terms of taking over the capital city of Kiev and the major other cities around the country that have been putting up a fierce resistance in response to this invasion. And because they've been getting such a large degree of resistance, it seems like Russia is now deciding to resort to much more indiscriminate types of bombing campaigns and is essentially conducting siege warfare. And we've been, I talked about the war crimes that they've been reported that they've committed on the ground. We're talking about bombing hospitals, bombing schools, etc. So it really is just an all-out assault that is being waged on Ukraine right now, and the civilian casualties are really starting to add up. So it's no wonder why so many people are trying to get the fuck out of this situation right now, especially as we are going to see, the worst of it really coming in the future or in the next couple of weeks if this war continues and, peace negotiations aren't able to actually work out. So they continue saying, quote, in just 7 days, 1 million people have fled Ukraine, uprooted by this senseless war, said Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And he says, I have worked in refugee emergencies for almost 40 years, and rarely have I seen an exodus as rapid as this one. Hour by hour, minute by minute, more people are fleeing the terrifying reality of violence. Countless have been displaced inside the country. And he says, unless there is an immediate end to this conflict, millions more are likely to be forced to flee Ukraine. And international solidarity has been heartwarming, but nothing can replace the need for guns to be silenced, for dialogue and diplomacy to succeed. Peace is the only way to halt this tragedy. So, of course, you hope that these peace negotiations that are kind of going on right now, there was the one that happened last Monday that was basically a complete failure. I think there's going to be another one today, so we hope for the best results from that. But, if Vladimir Putin is not willing to move from what his position is right now, and Zelensky is obviously not willing to move from his position, then it basically seems like we're not really close right now to having diplomatic solutions to this crisis, right? Vladimir Putin is still insisting that Zelensky be replaced by a pro-Russian leader, that the entire government that is currently in power in Ukraine is removed from power, and obviously Volodymyr Zelensky is not supportive of that, especially as his country continues to be invaded by Russia. So it really, I don't want to be too bleak or dark about it, but it really does not seem like this is going to happen. These peace talks are going to be working in the immediate future, although, always keep up that hope and always be trying to push for diplomacy to be happening no matter what the circumstances. Never try to escalate it worse than it already is right now. But they give a little bit more detail, saying the agency's stark assessment of the crisis in Ukraine came as Russia ramped up its attack on the country, seizing control of a major port city. And I'm going to show you a map update of exactly where that is, hammering densely populated areas with shelling and airstrikes, and continuing its advance on the capital, Kiev. Russian bombs and artillery fire have reportedly damaged and destroyed schools, residential and administrative buildings, and hospitals. And just to give you a perspective of what this type of destruction looks like on the ground, this is just an apartment building. Okay, this is an apartment building in Kiev. You can see there, just absolutely torn apart, obliterated by Russian forces. So they're not really sparing any civilian infrastructure or civilian lives in this continuing invasion. It seems like they're becoming less and less concerned with civilian casualties, so it's terrifying to see that happen. But they continue here saying, the UN Human Rights Office said Wednesday that through March 1st, at least 227 civilians were killed. Again, that's at least. It's always hard to know in the fog of war and this chaotic situation exactly what the numbers are, but at least 227 civilians were killed and more than 500 were injured in Russia's invasion, which shows no signs of abating despite the West's intensifying financial sanctions, targeting aspects of Russia's economy as well as the country's political leaders and oligarchs. I think I'm going to do a separate video on on the sanctions and breaking all of that down, because I do think we're not really going about this in the right way, and that we might even be, having blowback consequences to completely obliterating the entire Russian economy while refusing to go after the actual areas that would impact Vladimir Putin himself. So there's a lot of posturing that's going on right now and trying to look like the big tough guys that are really standing up to Putin, but you have to do that in a very calculated way, right? You don't want to be escalatory, and you definitely don't want to take it out on innocent Russian civilians who don't even support this war in the first place. So I'm going to do a separate video on the sanctions specifically, but finally we get a little bit of details here from some human rights organizations. So Human Rights Watch echoed this sentiment in a statement earlier this week, saying that it is vitally important for all countries neighboring Ukraine to allow everyone to enter with a minimum of bureaucratic procedures. The group also pointed with alarm to reports, and I covered this in my story story yesterday, that Africans and other foreign nationals have faced racist abuse and discrimination from authorities as they've attempted to escape the violence in Ukraine. I mean, we're literally talking about like people being segregated into different lines of people, some white Ukrainians and people who are citizens of Ukraine versus people who are like staying in the country and happen to have a different nationality. It's completely unacceptable, bigoted, racist, terrible. So that's a component of this you also have to be aware of. Obviously, all of these countries within the EU should be accepting as many Ukrainian refugees as they can possibly manage, and not just Ukrainians, but anybody who is getting wound up in this conflict and needs to flee the country. We shouldn't have this, separation or anything like that. But just to give you an update in terms of what it's looking like on the ground, we had this recent update that they took a major city. This is really the biggest and most major city that Russia has successfully taken. They say Russia takes the Kherson government building in siege of Ukraine. And some other important updates that they mention here, they say, quote, "We are being destroyed," said the Mariupol council. That says that the city is out of water and electricity. And after a call with Putin, that Emmanuel Macron of France convinced that the worst is yet to come. So again, with how catastrophically bad the situation is right now, it seems like we are still not seeing the worst of it, which is again terrifying. But they also say that they requested some significant aid from Biden. And just to give you an update on what it looks like on a map, basically. So this is the south of Ukraine right here, obviously the Crimea Peninsula area right here that Russia took years ago. But basically they moved in through Crimea, and this is that first city that we just mentioned up here, the Kherson city, which is a major city in Ukraine, heavy population, metropolitan area, and they've just successfully seized this territory here. So you can see it seems like where they've been most successful has been in the southern regions. They've also captured Melitopol, and they did that on February 25th, one day after the war started, and they're currently trying to completely surround and finally conquer Mariupol, which would basically cut Ukraine off entirely from the Sea of Azov, which is again a pretty major development. So that's what it's looking like on the ground. Still pretty bleak regardless of how you want to look at this, and at the end of the day, all we really care about is the civilian lives, right? You want to end this war as quickly as possible. You want to try to bring these two sides to the table and get some sort of an agreement. There's going to have to be concessions that need to be made for Vladimir Putin to basically save face. And there's been this quote that's been kind of going around that I think is a good one that people need to remind themselves of right now, which is from Sun Tzu's The Art of War, I think is what it's from. But basically the idea is build your enemy a golden bridge to retreat across, right? And I think that's a lesson that people should be trying to get into their brains right now is, yes, everybody wants to get riled up and everybody wants to punish Vladimir Putin and the Russian oligarchs, and of course you need to hold him responsible. It's never okay to just invade a sovereign country like he's done here. It's never okay to just commit widespread human rights abuses and war crimes against Ukrainian civilians. That much is obvious, but you also have to calculate that with the reality of what those types of things are going to be doing, right? Are they actually going to be successful in pushing Vladimir Putin away from this? And you don't want to try to back somebody into a corner who is already extremely paranoid, right? Vladimir Putin obviously not in the right state of mind to decide to fucking do this type of thing in the first place, but you don't want to back him into a corner, because at the end of the day, he is, a nuclear armed dictator, right? He has those at his disposal. And so you don't want to back him into a corner. You don't want to, escalate the crisis even further or make him feel like, his position is existentially under threat right now, because then who knows what the fuck he could do. That could make it even worse. That could make him escalate his response right now and bring us that much closer to the prospects of a larger scale war on the European continent, which absolutely has to be avoided at all costs. So, that's my position at the end of the day, and I'll do a couple more videos breaking down the different aspects of how this is continuing to develop. But, we, the United States, we should be accepting Ukrainian refugees, but just logistically, it's going to make a lot more sense for European Union countries to be accepting them, and they should do so at the maximum extent possible, and also not be discriminating and being horrible racist bigots on the border.